This is The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. Over our 12-episode season, I will share some of my best sweater knitting techniques with you while we knit a sweater together. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 5. Today, we're still working on the body, but we're talking about shaping. And when you want to start shaping, why I chose the specific stitch that I recommend, and any other shaping questions you might have. So we're going to be dealing with the middle third of the body of the sweater today. So you are the boss of your knitting. If you want a longer sweater, totally cool. There are a few different options of how you can adjust if you're going to make a longer sweater. But first, remember, get enough yarn. Get an extra skein if you're worried. If you're close, go ahead and get an extra skein. If you don't wind it up, most of the time your local yarn store will take that skein back as long as it's intact. If it's not, keep it, do something else wonderful with it, sell it on Ravelry, give it to a friend, donate it to whomever might get some benefit out of your beautiful yarn. If you are making your sweater longer, you can choose to just make the bottom section longer before you start the decreases, or you can choose to add a few more rows between the decreases and between the point where you end your decreases and begin your increases. So you can spread it all out, or you can keep that shaping section the same and just make the sweater longer. So when you're ready to start your decreases, you're following the pattern. It will tell you exactly what to do. You will slip your first stitch, you'll do your button band, you'll change yarns if you're changing yarns, and then you will knit over to a stitch. At that point, you are 2 stitches before what will actually be your sort of decrease stitch. Because what we're doing is we're decreasing 3 stitches to 1, and that's gonna make it symmetrical. And the cool thing about decreases is the first stitch you put your needle into, generally, especially on the front of the work I should say, becomes the top stitch or the new decrease stitch. So with what we call a centered double decrease, also called slip 2 knit 1 pass 2 slip stitches over, or SL2-K1-B2 SSO, which is why I call it a CDD, or centered double decrease. You're putting your needle into the second stitch first. So you want to put your needle into the second stitch and then the first stitch on the needle as if to knit, but you slip them off to your right needle. Then you knit the third stitch, and then you lift those 2 slip stitches over, and the second stitch becomes the stitch on top. It's really cool. The other 2 double decreases are knit 3 together, and for that you put the needle through the third stitch first, and that becomes the top stitch, and it leans this way for me. Now, if you want to have the first stitch be on top, and that happens in a lot of lace patterns, and it's the sort of usual way people think of a 2-stitch decrease. You slip 1 stitch, knit the next 2 stitches together, and then lift that first slip stitch over. And that puts that right stitch on top. Now I'm going to show you the different kinds of decreases. Here we have 3 stitches, and we want to turn them into 1. So first I'm going to show you our center double decrease. We slip the needle into both stitches, slip them, knit the next stitch, grab these 2 slip stitches and lift them up and over. And you can see there, that's the centered stitch right there. Check it out, so nice and tidy. Now, I'm going to show you the other 2 leaning decreases just so you get an idea. This is slip 1, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over. And you can see this one leans to the left because that is our top stitch, the first stitch we put our needle into. And now let me do a few more, just so we have a little space between them. And now we're going to do knit 3 together for that. Oh. And you can see that leans to the right. Let's see, there. See how that leans to the right. So we've got our beautiful centered double decrease here. Slip one, knit two together, pass slip stitch over here, which leans to the left, and knit three together, which leans to the right. So now you know all the different double decreases, and I'm going to move a little further along and I will show you the two single decreases. There are variations on them, but usually we have slip, slip, knit, which can also be knit two together through the back loop, and that gives a slightly different presentation, but you can see this one leans to the left. And now we will knit two together, which leans to the right. And you can see how those work, angling the decreases. And we can use that to our advantage in knitting. A lot of lace patterns take advantage of that lean, but we don't want the lean. I suppose you could want the lean, but I don't. I like the center double decrease. The great thing about it is it also, as you're going forward, or up, I should say, tells you what to do. So once you do that decrease, I tell you to put a pin in it, or a coilless safety pin, a removable marker. It goes right into the stitch, and now that's on your stitch and you'll know exactly what to do. And as you work up, you'll come and you'll do the second center double decrease. We do two sets of decreases on the body. And then as you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you get to the point where you're going to start your increases for your bust, that is where you will now be able to follow that line up from your center double decrease stitch, and you will start increasing on either side of that stitch to do the bust increases. And I just think it's so great, it's so tidy and elegant, and we'll use those decreases again in the raglan yoke. And you'll notice in the raglan yoke of my solstice cardie that it looks like there's this little delicate line of stitches. And there isn't that line down here in the body shaping. The reason for that is we're doing the decreases for the raglan yoke every other row. So it's sort of pushing those stitches up just a little bit away from the other fabric. And here you just don't notice it as much because they're not stacked up there aren't that many rows stacked up. So that's the great shaping. We're gonna do decreases at 4 points around the body, 2 on the front and 2 on the back, and they're sort of centered in the front panels, and the same thing in the back. Then when it comes time for us to do our increases, we're doing the increases all at the front, which is where we want the additional fabric as we're moving up the body. I think of, you know, the waist, it's all the way around. You want that decreasing, and then we'll do the sort of narrow part of the waist, but then most female bodies need more fabric at the front. And it's fine if you have other patterns that have you do the increases all the way around. The great thing about knitted fabric, as I've said before, is that it stretches and it's flexible, and so it can sort of move around the body. So there's nothing wrong with that. I have other patterns that do that kind of shaping, but for this sweater we want the wow factor to be in the front, and so that's why we put the increases there. Okay, there are other patterns that do the shaping all at the sides, and that's fine. Again, we're making the shaping part of the look of the sweater. When I do a cabled sweater, I'll often do the shaping at the sides because there isn't really room with other crazy things going on in the front or the back to also get shaping in there. So shaping at the sides, again, the flexible fabric, it's not a problem. It really isn't. But we definitely, we're doing it here so that we're making the most of our shaping. As you can see, I have gotten to the point where I am ready to start doing my decreases. Again, I'm very happy with my yarn and my color choice. It's perfect for spring. This is from Round Table Yarns. As I've said, it's the Camelot yarn. It's got a little bit of cashmere in it. It's the Orkney colorway, which is just so pretty. And as always, we're going to slip our first stitch. We're going to do our button band, and I need to do my buttonhole. I knew there was a reason I paused right there so that I could do a buttonhole with you. Knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1 and 2. And then I'm going to change my skeins. I know. One other thing I wanted to tell you, another option for doing the buttonholes, even though I have you do the buttonholes on both button bands, a clever knitter on Ravelry suggested doing 2 purl stitches instead on the second button band, on the button band that you know you're going to sew your buttons on. And instead of doing knit 2 together, yarn over, she does 2 purl stitches, and that way she'll also know exactly where to sew on her buttons. And I thought that was a great alternative for those of you who are worried that you'll forget or just don't want to have to worry about sewing closed to that other buttonhole. I don't have a problem with it. I do it numerous cardigans, but I could understand if you'd rather not. And I just realized I'm not actually counting the stitches, so I'm not quite sure how far over I have to go for my shaping. But that's okay. I will count now. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, I'm almost there. 4 more. And we are now ready to do the center double decrease. And we'll put the needle in to the second stitch and then the first stitch, just like you're going to do knit 2 together, but don't wrap the yarn, and just slip them over to your other needle. Then I knit the next stitch, and I use my left needle to lift those 2 stitches up and over. And as you can see, that means that the second stitch ends up on top and becomes the center double decrease. When I was talking about double decreases, I forgot to mention that the needle through the stitch, that leaning decreases are the same for single decreases as well. So if you are doing a slip knit versus a knit 2 together, if you look at it while you're doing it, you will realize which stitch will be on top and which way your stitches are going to lean. And you can use that to subtle effect so that you don't really notice the decreases. You can also use it as for a fully finished effect. And that can mean that you have those decreases stand out and show off against the fabric for your sweater. And I now need to find my removable stitch markers. I have these great little Edison bulb stitch markers. I've talked about them before, I think in the first episode. And they're really just a safety pin that have kind of been stretched out a little crazily. And what you do is you put it right into the front leg of the stitch that you want to mark. And because it isn't a regular safety pin, it won't get caught in the yarn. You won't have any snagging. But now my stitch is marked, and so I won't have to worry about decreasing for a few rows. Then when it's time to do it again, I can follow the line from the marker up the rows of stitches to see where my next center double decrease is going to be. If you're a new knitter, you may want to move this marker up every couple of rows just so that you know exactly where it is if you're worried. But if you gently pull down a little on that stitch, you'll be able to see that line, follow it, and then you're reading your knitting, which is something I highly recommend you learn how to do, because then you can easily see if you've made mistakes before they become a real problem. So now I'm going to move along, and I have 3 more center double decreases to do. I won't do them here on camera for you, but you should go ahead and do them. And then you will work even, as we call it, and that means you won't make any increases or decreases for however many rows you're going to do until you do your next shaping row. And once you've done the 2 shaping rows, and assuming that that is enough shaping for you, you will work even again for however many inches I tell you for your size in the pattern. And that will bring you up to the point where you're going to be ready to start working your increases. But before you do that, when you think you're ready, I want you to, if you're working on a shorter needle, maybe place your stitches on a longer piece of waste yarn. What you want to do is hold it up to your body, hold it up right under your bust, and make sure that you have knit enough fabric that makes you happy for the body of your sweater before you're going to start your increases. And that way you'll be sure that it's going to fit you properly. It's going to give you that nice, elegant shaping for the bust right where you want it to be. When you're ready to work your increases, you can remove the removable markers, conveniently, from your back stitches. You don't need to worry about them anymore. And then I would also move the marker up to the top before you start your bust increases, because that way you'll know exactly which stitch you want to increase along. And we're creating that nice long line. We're using sort of an optical, it's not quite an optical illusion, but it's telling the eye where to go. We don't need to be out at the sides. We want to be following those princess seams up all the way up to our beautiful faces. So here you can see our marked stitch, and it's got the stitch holder through one of the legs, and it's the front leg. And you can see now, if I pull gently down, you can see the line up to our next double decrease. Look at how those line up so nicely right there. And now we'll keep following that row, that column of stitches, and we come all the way up here where I am ready to do my increases. And I make one, knit one, and then I make one the other way. And now I have 3 stitches. And then I will continue on until I get to the other front centered stitch. And I'll just show you here, because of course I've removed the back markers, and now there's my other one. And I just follow the line up, 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 and I will make my increases around here. And at this point I probably will move my marker up to this stitch. So in fact, I'll show you how I do that. So take it out, open it up. It's just like a safety pin. Pull that gently, and we're following this line of stitches. I'm going to go up here, and to put the marker in, it doesn't actually go into the yarn of the stitch, it goes between the front and back legs of the stitch. Whoop. There we go. And you see how it can just hang there nicely. It doesn't interfere with the knitting, and it shouldn't change the size of the stitch at all, but it goes through the legs of the stitch. And there's your marker, and then we'll make our increases on either side of the marker. So we've moved the markers up and we're ready. And now once again, we're going to do those directional make ones like we did for the sleeve. And we're going to knit right up to the first marked stitch, make one in one direction, knit that stitch and make it in the other direction. And as you can see, it creates this nice sort of expanding look for the stitches, because each stitch, when it starts, when you have this new made stitch, it's going to have all the subsequent rows are going to sort of glide out like that. And once you've finished your increases, you can remove those pins. You won't need them until it's time to bring everything together. But we've still got quite a bit of knitting before we get to the point where we're going to put the sleeves and the body together. Right? I've had a couple of additional questions about shaping, including what to do if you need more fabric in the bust, and if you're changing from one size to another, going between your hip and your bust. So my recommendation is to add a couple more increases if necessary here in the bust. But I wouldn't do more than 2 more rows of increases. If you need more fabric than that, I would suggest doing a second pair of increases outside of the original pair as you go up until you have enough stitches. Now, the other question is, what if your bust isn't as big as the way the bust is written in the pattern, if you're more of a pear shape? So then you could still do these increases here. But in that case, I'd recommend pairing them with a decrease hidden here at the underarm. And that way you have the right number of stitches, but you still get the look of all of those increases there in the bust. So I think that's it for today. If you have any questions, be sure to ask them. Here on the YouTube page for this episode is great. Otherwise, I recommend joining the Ravelry forums, the Kathleen Dames Design group, and there's a thread for each different episode. So that way we can really focus on the issues that come up in a particular episode. And so you don't have to scroll through the whole thread of the main sweater. There are a lot of posts there. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm having a great time. I'm loving my sweater so far. I hope you are too. And I hope whatever mods you're making are going well. If you're following the pattern exactly, thank you. That's pretty cool too. But remember, you're the boss of your knitting. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to make you happy. This isn't supposed to be stressful. You can always find the episodes. They will live on YouTube. And now I'm on iTunes. Yay! So feel free to go and download if you prefer listening to watching. I'm on iTunes now, The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. And if you do listen, please feel free to leave a comment, share, review, give stars, all those usual things, and help get the word out about the sweater. I hope you're having a great time, and I will see you next week where we'll talk more about the rest of knitting the body. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much, and happy knitting. Bye! This is season 1 of The Sweater, and we are knitting the Solstice Cardi together. Many thanks to Karen at Roundtable Yarns, Natalie at Remembrances Pottery, Corinna at Picnic Knits, Tara Swiger and my fellow Starship captains, and you for being part of this knitting adventure. Don't forget to visit KathleenDames.com/thesweater to sign up for the newsletter before March 25th and get your free copy of the Solstice Cardi pattern in the welcome email. Is it after March 25th? Purchase your copy of the Solstice Cardi from my Ravelry shop. And be sure to share your project on social media using the hashtags KDSweater and Solstice Cardi. Questions? Comments? Just want to share your progress? Visit the Kathleen Dames Design Ravelry forum for support and camaraderie. Thanks so much for joining me, and happy knitting!